Hello, everyone. Welcome to Get to Know a Chaplain with the Spiritual Life Center at the University of Lynchburg. My name is Nathan. I'm the Associate Chaplain here on campus. And we just have this weekly kind of get to know our chaplains, where I have the privilege of interviewing people I work with and see every day. Right now, I see them virtually every day. But normally, we share an office together, and it is a great group of people, and we thought we would introduce each of them to you. So on today's mini virtual episode, we have the privilege to learn and hear from the Reverend Dr. Katrina Brooks. She is our assistant chaplain here at the Spiritual Life Center. So I'm going to welcome her in, and we're going to get to know Katrina Brooks. Welcome, Katrina.
Hey, good to see you. Good to be here.
I know. We were just on another call, and now we're back together.
There we are.
In a different avenue.
Welcome Katrina, to our Mondays.
I know, right? Tell us a little bit, for those watching and those who will watch later on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Tell us a little bit about who you are, and then what do you do on campus?
Okay. So I'm Katrina, probably within the Spiritual Life Center. I have one of the more vague job descriptions. It's, the chaplain, and you have some very specific duties throughout campus and committees that you're assigned to. So probably a good way to describe what I do is a lot of student engagement. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of training and leadership development, only with that spiritual connection. So I meet one-on-one with students. I meet with student groups. We do small group coaching and strategic planning, and then sometimes do something as simple as how do you lead a Bible study? How do you do those kind of things? So yeah, probably student engagement is a really good moniker for what I do here. Absolutely. And then other duties as assigned by you or assigned by the chaplain or the division dean or whatever. I also have the ability some semesters some academic years to advise students. Mm-hmm. That's something I love and I'm really passionate about. I do believe that we all have a purpose and a gift to the world. And if we could figure out how those things, along with who we are, fit together, we're able to discern our majors and job career things and find our calling.
I'm going to ask you actually about that, because I know you have your doctorate. You're a life coach. Your doctorate and your dissertation was on like this idea of vocation and finding your calling in life. So why is that a passion of yours? What kind of brought that on? And then also, how do you find with students, and as you engage students, how do you see that working out in their lives?
Good question. I came to this topic pretty much from my own experience. I felt very much called to be a senior pastor, and that worked for me for a while in my life. I was serving as a senior pastor. And then that just wasn't my calling anymore. That didn't fit who I was. So I had this really existential crisis, crisis of faith, whatever you want to say, does that mean I wasn't called? And so it came to do, I approached that in the only way I know how, and that's to research and to read and to dive into it. Both into the biblical text as well as other writers on this topic. And I had to really wrestle with who I was. What was my why? What was my purpose? To use some Simon Sinek language, I had to start with my why. And once I figured that out, then how I expressed that and what I did would make more sense. Those would easily come. And so I discovered that my why is to love relentlessly, that is my why. And I express that as a pastor and as a prophet in those biblical senses of meaning making and making people whole, because that's really what a pastor is. They empower people to become whole. And so what I do and how I do that, whether it's been whether here now as a chaplain, a university chaplain, or I've I've been an associate professor and taught religion classes and also humanities classes and lots of other things. Been a senior pastor, a youth pastor. All that changes a little bit depending on what the season is. But it's all about empowering people to do that. And I don't think that was a word from God just for me. I think that's a word for everyone. And when you know your why, you know what you're doing, what your calling is, it makes so many hard things endurable. So when exams, you've got 49,000 exams. I've had conversations with students over the years where they're talking about, I'm getting ready to lose it and I'm going to walk out. And I said, wait a minute, tell me about your calling. And we talk about that calling. And I said, so instead of calling it exams, instead of it calling it tests, instead of it calling it projects, what if it's part of your worship, part of a longer journey, part of a side stop to get you that point? And they're like, so I think that's what I want for students is I want them to understand that they matter and who they are has a place in the world, and introducing them to call language with my sample population. They're like, really? Call language can be used for people other than ministers? And I'm going, you betcha. In fact, that's a more organic use of call language than for just clergy. Even though there are some traditions that reserve that language to the ordained only to clergy. Sure. I think that's my word to students is let's figure out your why, and things like that will matter and fall into place. Yeah.
That's awesome. You alluded a little bit in some of the kind of examples you gave, but what is your spiritual background? What's been your spiritual journey throughout your life?
I grew up in a Roman Catholic home. My dad was Independent Baptist and my mom was Roman Catholic. They got married at a time in the church where if that happened, you either all had to leave the church or you all had to become Catholic. And so my dad chose to abdicate, and there's a form and it had to be signed and very proper so that we could be raised Roman Catholic. And then when I got to college, I found that my questions stepped beyond the limitations of Roman Catholicism at that time. And so I found myself intentionally choosing to become Baptist. And at the time, there was only that thing called Southern Baptist, and it was in the great state, an amazing state of Alabama. So I was, and the reason why I was there is I was at a Baptist college in Birmingham, Alabama at Stanford University. My undergraduate degree is from there. I met my spouse when I was visiting in church. His roommate brought him and my roommates brought me. And so we met, and that's a whole nother side story. So like Meet the Chaplain, like series 7 or something. We'll get into that scandal. And then it was a matter of, I knew I was called. I knew God, and what I understood that to mean is God had something special for me to do in the world. But I thought it was marrying a Baptist preacher. So I spent a lot of time following that, knowing I still needed education in that and trying to figure out what that meant. But really just playing a sidekick role almost to my spouse, who is a Baptist pastor. And so going through seminary, going through churches, and then kind of getting to that point that, God's saying, that's all cool and fun. And yes, he's a better pastor because you're rocking it with him and, helping things out. But honestly, I've got something just for you. And I have something that suits your personality and all those places that you've been and experiences. I have something for you. And so then it became this quest of figuring out what that was. And ultimately, it led me to do really cool things, like I mentioned before, teaching college students, the community college professor, being an interim chaplain at a hospital, being a youth pastor, being a senior pastor, being a co-pastor. And now I get to be this amazing university chaplain and work with students. So
That's
yeah.
great. What do you love about this location, being at the University of Lynchburg Spiritual Life Center? What do you love about this role and this campus?
So I think one of the things I love the most about this institution is its founding idea that faith and reason are not absent from each other.
Mm.
It's this conversation. It's this journey together. We don't, leave our brains at the door with our faith. Faith is not just all happy emotions type of thing, but faith is an intentional commitment to follow, regardless of where that takes you, which is always interesting. It's been interesting over the years to see our institution and how they've followed that and branched into new ways and stuff. I love the fact that we're liberal arts. We're unapologetically a liberal arts institution. I honestly believe that the absence of liberal arts education plays a major role in our lack of critical thinking and analytical thinking in the world. We become very reactionary, and that's not what it was. What was intended. It was intended for us to be intentional, and that comes with critical thinking and analytical thinking. So I absolutely love being here. I love the fact that spiritual growth is not defined in terms of only evangelical language or even Christian language, that there's faith is bigger than those monikers. Sure. And our challenge is to assist students in awakening to who they are as a complete human. Yeah. And that means wrestling and figuring that out.
And so what would you say to our students right now, right? We're living through a pandemic, an election season, a crazy different semester than what they've had in the past. What would you want to remind students of, or just encourage students right now with?
I would encourage them to say that you're not alone. You've got this. It doesn't seem like it. It seems very dark right now. But there are also those of us on campus who've been in similar places before, similar dark periods. I remember putting my babies to bed on September 11th and trying to calm their anxiety, not knowing if we would get up the next morning. And others on campus have those stories. And so we can hold hands and do this together. I personally believe in a sacred divine that has us, particularly in these times, that never lets go and never gives up. And so regardless of all the feels, I need to keep that center. And so I would invite students to do that same thing. Yeah. Is they matter. They've got this. We've got each other, and God has them.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Katrina, thanks for being a part of our Get to Know a Chaplain web series. For those of you who want to hang out with Katrina more, stop by the Spiritual Life Center. We also have opportunities to meet with her online. We have she has plenty of coaching opportunities that she'd be more than willing to engage with you. And as always, from the Spiritual Life Center, it's just our reminder that you would be kind, that you'd love others, and don't be a jerk, please. It's that simple. We'll see you next time on Get to Know a Chaplain from the Spiritual Life Center.